In yet another display of extraordinary ingenuity, Ukraine's armed forces have transformed a more than 40-year-old fighter jet, the Soviet-era MiG-29, into a deadly, devastating bomber ready to rain down fire on Russia's bases, drone production facilities, and other important targets. This simple change is bringing those old jets well and truly into the modern era, making them drastically more powerful without the need for fancy new guidance systems or other expensive upgrades. To understand why this is such a smart move, it helps to examine the equipment Ukraine is using to defend its territory from Russian invaders. It's well known that the country has received many modern weapons and other pieces of cutting-edge military hardware from allies across the Western world since the invasion began. That includes smart munitions and precision-guided bombs that use modern technologies like Global Positioning System, GPS, guidance systems to lock on and strike their target with ruthless precision. However, Ukraine also possesses a significant amount of its own older hardware, much of it dating all the way back to the Soviet era. Hardware like the MiG-29 fighter jet, which was developed way back in the 1970s and first entered service in 1983. It was a terrific jet for its time, designed to be fast, agile and deadly. However, now more than 4 decades after its first flight, the MiG-29 is naturally starting to look more than a little out of date. And this mix of decades old and brand new equipment poses a problem for Ukraine. A problem of compatibility, because old and new pieces of hardware often don't work too well when combined. The MiG-29, for example, may have been an effective dogfighter jet in its day, more than a match for other leading fighters from around the world. But that's not much use to Ukraine today. It wouldn't get much value out of sending old Soviet jets into the skies to engage Russian fighters in one-on-one battles. In fact, it would likely lose almost all of those battles since Russia has access to much stronger jets nowadays like the Sukhoi Su-57s. Instead, what Ukraine really wants is to be able to repurpose its MiG-29s and use them to fire modern-day missiles or drop bombs on enemy targets deep in Russian territory. Targets like bases, command posts, oil depots, roads and railway lines. The type of targets that truly strike a blow to the Russian war effort and cripple the country's offensive forces, delaying their progress, wasting their resources, and giving Ukraine's defenders valuable time and breathing room to rest and regroup. But the MiG-29's technology is primitive by today's standards. Its onboard computer has no idea what GPS even is, let alone how to access and transmit precise location data to precision missiles or glide bombs, like the French AASM Hammer, which uses a mixture of GPS and inertial navigation systems to strike its target. Loading AASM Hammers onto an old MiG-29 would be like trying to connect the latest video game console to a black and white TV. So, how can a jet made in the 1970s be used to fire 21st century bombs and missiles? Enter the iPad. First released in 2010 and now in its 11th generation, Apple's iconic tablet is beloved around the world. When he first unveiled it at a press conference in San Francisco, Apple's co-founder Steve Jobs showed off the tablet's ability to browse the web, send emails, store photos and use apps. He could never have imagined, however, how Ukraine's armed forces would repurpose his creation years later to provide an invaluable upgrade to their old Soviet jets. Indeed, even leading military experts couldn't have predicted how Ukraine would stretch the boundaries of how an iPad could be used. However, at the annual Global Security Forum of the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS think tank, which was held in April of last year, Dr. William LaPlante, Under-Secretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment, confirmed that Ukraine has installed iPads and similar tablets into the cockpits of its Soviet-era jets to allow for rapid integration and deployment of modern Western weapons. Dr. LaPlante was asked to provide examples of rapid military development.
There's also a series of, if you think about the, we call it air-to-ground is what we call it euphemistically, but it's think about the aircraft that the Ukrainians have. And not even the F-16s, but they have a lot of the Russian, the Soviet-era aircraft. Working with the Ukrainians, we've been able to take many Western weapons and get them to work on their aircraft where it's basically controlled by an iPad by the pilot. and they're flying it in conflict like a week after we get it to them.
LaPlante didn't go into any further detail at the event, but around that same time, the Ukrainian Air Force shared a video online showing another of its old Soviet jets, a Sukhoi Su-27, fitted with what appears to be either an iPad or some other commercially available tablet, sitting in a prominent position, right in front of the pilot, even covering up some of the other dials and instruments, which shows what an important role it has to play. For one brief moment in the clip, a navigational map can also be seen displayed on the tablet's display, along with other pieces of data. It's worth noting too that the Su-27 in the video is carrying US-supplied AGM-88 high-speed anti-radiation missiles. These air-to-surface missiles are designed to detect and destroy radar antennas and transmitters. Naturally, since they were designed in the US, they weren't made to work with Soviet jets, but Ukraine has found a way to integrate them. It's also successfully integrated the likes of Joint Direct Attack Munition Extended Range JDAM-ER precision guided bombs, also from the US, as well as the aforementioned French-supplied Hammer glide bombs. And, based on LaPlante's comments, it appears that iPads have played a key role in the integration process. Ukraine hasn't shared much information about how exactly this is done, but military analysts from outlets like the War Zone have made some educated guesses on how it all works. It's likely that the bombs and missiles are being deployed against targets with known coordinates, which allows them to have pre-programmed flight paths to help in striking their targets. These paths can be configured prior to takeoff. Then, the jet pilot simply has to navigate to the designated location, most likely with the aid of GPS technology and navigational maps displayed on their onboard iPad before releasing the weapon. The iPad can then, with the aid of specialized software, convert its own global positioning information into a language that the bombs can process and transmit that data to the weapon. It uses that data, combined with its own inertial navigation system, to finish the job. It's believed that Ukraine has also attached specialized pylons to its old Su-27 and MiG-29 jets in order to physically carry weapons like JDAM-ERs and Hammers. These pylons may aid in transmitting GPS information to the weapon prior to its point of release, and could even contain some sort of electronic support measures to identify or even locate nearby radar systems and other threat emitters. If so, this could allow the pilot to strike targets of opportunity that they might not have previously identified. Imagine a pilot is following their planned flight path to a pre-selected target, for example, but identifies an enemy radar station or mobile air defense system while en route. They could, theoretically, with the aid of their onboard iPad and threat detecting pylons, decide to strike that target instead of or in addition to their original objective. There are also numerous other ways in which a cockpit tablet could provide invaluable or even life-saving information to a fighter jet pilot. It could serve as a kind of visualized radar warning system, for example, alerting pilots to any radar emitters in the area. Or it could present data in visual format from onboard electronic support systems, overlaid onto a map or navigational display, helping the pilot to avoid the most dangerous areas of airspace. It could also, quite simply, serve as a weapons deployment interface, with the pilot needing only to tap a button on the screen at just the right time to drop bombs or fire precision missiles at their target. All of this helps to make these seemingly outdated Soviet jets dramatically more survivable and impactful on the battlefield. And the best part is how quick and cost-effective it is. If the Ukrainian armed forces had needed to create a whole new military-level integration system to equip its old jets with modern bombs, it would have cost a fortune. And even with financial aid from the US, Canada, Europe and other allies around the world, Ukraine doesn't have millions of dollars to spare that it can simply throw around on costly research and development projects. It would also have been a highly time-consuming endeavor. Ukraine might have needed years not only to design and develop a system that worked, but also to integrate that system across its fleet of fighter jets and then train pilots on how to use it. In this war, time is arguably the most valuable commodity of them all, and Ukraine certainly can't afford to waste it. The country faces daily drone and missile strikes, along with ongoing artillery attacks and waves of Russian forces rushing across its borders to take over its territory. Russia's strikes are becoming increasingly frequent, ferocious and deadly, with Ukraine sadly suffering record levels of civilian casualties in 2025. It has to strike back and strengthen its defensives, and it needs results now. Projects that would take many months or years to develop and cost millions of dollars to deploy are of little use to Ukraine's army or civilians. But rapid and cost-effective solutions, like using $500 iPads to equip old jets with modern weapons, are incredibly valuable and can help to turn the tide of this war. The benefits of this exciting innovation are already being seen in action. In the last few months, there have been several real-world reports of Ukraine using Soviet MiG-29s to successfully drop bombs on Russian targets. Arguably, the most notable example came in May, when Ukraine used MiG-29s equipped with French AASM Hammers to hit a base belonging to the Russian Federal Security Service, or FSB, in the Belgorod region, not too far from the Ukrainian border. Hammers are all-weather, smart air-to-surface weapons created by French avionics company Safran Electronics and Defense. Designed for close air support and deep strike missions, they entered service in 2007 and have been used by multiple military forces across the globe, including the French, Egyptian, Moroccan and Indian Air Forces. Each hammer is made up of a nose-mounted guidance section, plus a tail-mounted range extension kit, which has winglets to help the bomb maneuver in the air, along with a rocket booster for additional speed and thrust. It boasts an operational range of more than 43 miles, over 70 kilometers, and uses a hybrid guidance system featuring both GPS and inertial components to strike its targets with only a minimal margin of error. The nose section can also have either infrared homing or laser guidance module to improve accuracy and strike moving targets. This, combined with the fact that the hammer can carry warheads ranging from about 275 pounds up to 2,205 pounds, make it one of the most versatile smart glide bombs in existence today and one of the deadliest. A single successful strike can obliterate enemy vehicles and structures. So, back in January 2024, when French President Emmanuel Macron announced that France would be sending several hundred hammer bombs to Ukraine at a rate of 50 units per month over the course of 2024, that was huge news. It represented a huge boon for the Ukrainian armed forces and unlocked whole new opportunities for them to strike and wipe out large, significant targets on Russian soil. They just needed an effective and reliable way to drop those bombs from their MiG jets, so that as many of them as possible hit their targets and as few as possible were wasted. That's where the aforementioned iPAD technology came into play, and on the morning of May 26, that technology was put to the test when Ukrainian MiG-29 pilots took off from Ukrainian territory and travelled towards the Russian region of Belgorod. They would likely have remained close to the ground to begin with, perhaps around 164 feet from the earth. This might seem like a risky maneuver, but it's actually done with the pilot's best interests in mind. Russia has a range of powerful air defense systems set up to scan the surrounding airspace for any enemy threats. Systems like the S-400, which can detect targets up to 250 miles away. However, by flying so low to the ground, the Ukrainian jets are effectively able to conceal themselves behind the curvature of the earth, remaining effectively invisible to Russia's radars until they're right up close, and by that point, it's usually too late for the Russians to respond. That's exactly what happened here. The jets were each equipped with a pair of hammer bombs weighing around 550 pounds each, and despite being called glide bombs, hammers have a lot of similarities with precision missiles in terms of how they work. They aren't just dropped from above before plummeting to earth. Instead, as explained earlier, each one has its own rocket motor, which fires up once the bomb leaves the jet or aircraft carrying it. That motor generates enough thrust to propel the bomb at near supersonic speeds towards its target, and can easily pierce armor and destroy fortified, reinforced vehicles and buildings. Once they drew near to their target, the MiGs would have swiftly surged upwards, traveling thousands of feet into the air. Russian radars and air defense systems would almost surely have spotted them at that stage, bursting to life and beginning to lock on. They're fast, but not that fast. The radars first have to detect and identify the enemy threat. Then fire control systems kick in, locking onto the jets and developing a firing solution to bring them down. It then takes several seconds for missiles to fire, and more time for them to travel through the air and hit their targets. Fortunately, the Ukrainians would have anticipated all this, moving quickly to an altitude of more than 16,000 feet and using the precise GPS data provided by the cockpit's iPad. The pilots dropped their bombs and rapidly retreated from the scene, using the MiG-29's famous agility and maneuverability to escape and dive back down to a state of low flight, safe from Russian radars and interceptor missiles. No sooner had they appeared then they were gone, leaving the Russians wondering what had happened. Meanwhile, the bomb's rocket engines activated, sending them speeding towards the FSB Belgorod base. Using global positioning system data and inertial navigation, they carefully and instantaneously adjusted their trajectory, making countless micro-corrections to ensure they hit their target. Less than 2 minutes later, the bomb struck. First, they penetrated the roof of the FSB base, but didn't explode right away. They'd been programmed with delayed fuses to maximize their destructive potential. So, several seconds after entering the building, they blew up, almost certainly obliterating any and all people inside at that moment. Hammer blasts are said to be so powerful they can create vast shockwaves, sending items like furniture and shards of glass hundreds of feet in every direction. Even those outside the base wouldn't have had time to flee the scene and survive, and a video of the attack was later shared on the Sunflower Telegram channel alongside the caption, "Aviation continues to operate in all directions. MiG-29s destroy enemy forces, including officers of the FSB. This is what happens when you don't get it the first time. Then the Cossacks have to go back and have the conversation again. Hashtag AASM Hammer. Location BNR Glotovo." The video clearly shows the initial impact damage to the base's roof, with the resulting 2 explosions sending large pieces of debris and thick grey plumes of dust and smoke into the air. While no details have since been released regarding the number of casualties, this attack was a clear and definitive success for Ukraine, especially as the base in question was operated by the FSB, the direct successor to the infamous Soviet-era KGB and a vital part of President Vladimir Putin's regime. In fact, this was actually the first confirmed attack from Ukraine on an FSB-linked facility, adding to its many other successful strikes on other Russian targets like drone production plants, military factories, fuel depots, ammunition storage facilities and airfields. An attack on the FSB on Russian soil undermines Russian confidence in national security and its own intelligence agencies. It proves yet again that Ukraine can and will strike with precision, and that it has the ingenuity and creativity to strike in ways that even Putin can never predict, like fitting an iPad to a 40-year-old fighter jet. And this is just one of many ways in which Ukraine is successfully striking back against the Kremlin, using both Western weapons and its own domestic innovations to deal one blow after another, like its series of successful strikes on Russian drone production facilities detailed in our recent video, or its clever use of German-supplied Skynex air defense systems to blast Russian Shahed drones right out of the sky. You might also like to check out our breakdown of the 7 deadliest Western weapons Ukraine is using right now to turn the tide of the conflict and leave Russian battle plans in disarray. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to our trusted news channel for more day-by-day detailed video updates from the front lines of Ukraine and beyond.